I came to the conclusion years ago that the trans movement is the greatest evil our country faces. I only become more and more sure of this fact with each passing day, and more determined to oppose it until my...
Him and Ben Shapiro in the past like 3 or 4 months have just been ramping up in their own brain so much. And it's like, it's that meme. Have you seen the meme where it's kind of like the SpongeBob SquarePants stuck inside this like asylum, and then all the walls have like the trans pride flag and SpongeBob SquarePants face, and it's just like, this is like a weird nightmare of your own design. Like, these people are not impacting you or affecting your life in any way, shape, or form. You're not trans. You don't have trans friends. You don't have trans kids. You don't have trans relatives. You don't care about trans people whatsoever. So, but yet still you fixate. Still you are trapped inside the cube for all time. And just keeps getting worse and worse. You just ramp it up, and things in your own mind, your own delusions, just become more and more intense. Quick content warning, we're going to be talking obviously about the mass shooting and the fallout, and just how fast the right wing, as I've already documented, has been running with a relatively fucked up narrative. I think that's the nicest way I can put it. Very fucked up, to suggest that this has something to do with trans ideology or trans terrorism, or this is someone who was led to extremism due to the unacceptance by society, and this is their threats, and they're making threats now, and apparently there's a trans day of revenge, and they're trying to now attack, and they're going on a patrol against the cis, and soon the trans will be firing out all this nonsense, where it's like, hey, there has been no definitive information at this point that the reason that the person who committed this atrocious, horrifying act did so because they were fueled by an anger or animosity for people at that school specifically not accepting them for being trans, or that they had made a threat to the school for that reason. There is, however, at this moment, evidence of the fact that there was sexual abuse that was taking place in that school. That does not justify the actions of anyone who would murder innocent children. I'm going to have to keep putting that in there because these all get clipped instantaneously. No, condemn this action on the highest possible terms. What I am saying is that this school, that may have been a possible motivation. That could have been a possible thing. I'm also not going to say with definitive certainty that it is, because we do not know at this time. It is spurious and irresponsible and opportunistic of the highest order to go in one direction or the other, to be like, well, I would say without any shadow of a doubt at this point, this could be a victim of abuse, sexual abuse, and that's why they did what they did. Or in the other opposite direction, maybe it's because someone didn't accept their gender identity, or maybe it's because of something else, until you know definitively. Because in other cases, like, we have been so lied to by the right. When the Pulse nightclub shooter, when information was coming out about that, and shortly afterwards the person began to identify as they, them, which was something that was in opposition to his pronouns that he was using on an everyday basis, what his mother referred to him as, later after even saying that, what the lawyer refers to him as, the lawyer still uses he, him, stuff like that. All of that, at this point, that individual had a father who was ashamed of the fact that his son may be gay, who was actually straight up like, he's not gay though. And they're like, no, he's not gay. And it's like, but, oh God, I'm really happy he's not gay. It's like, well, yeah, but we're telling you that he murdered a bunch of people. I mean, killed them. That's bad. Yeah, but he's not gay. No, he's not gay. And then it turns out the guy runs a neo-Nazi website, that as well. That's pretty fucked up. You know, it really seems at this point to be someone who had some very deep-seated anti-LGBTQ plus hatred, and this is pretty well documented. They had a history of using anti-LGBTQ plus slurs in addition to everything else. They were very heavily bullied online. That's one fucked up pattern that seems to be a consistent in a lot of these. And yes, I talk about that individual as an absolute monster as well. His actions are horrifying. All of theirs are. This is not about justifying any of their actions. It's about looking at what's taking place, who's taking advantage of the narrative or trying to push a narrative before they actually have information. Like, not only is it unbelievably ghoulish for Matt Walsh to feel like in the past 48 hours he's had just like, it's Walshmas, you know? It's like, oh, 'twas the night before Walshmas, and all through the house a conspiracy about trans people would make the town lose their minds, whatever it is. That he's so fucking excited. And also, there's so much stuff that's come out about Matt Walsh in the past, I'd say, 24 hours as well. Check this out. This is how Matt Walsh responded to a shooting at Colorado Planned Parenthood that killed a police officer and 2 civilians, by the way. Yes, this is a perfectly appropriate time to point out that Planned Parenthood is a demonic cartel of bloodthirsty butchers. Oh wait, there's more. If any side should tone down their rhetoric because of the Planned Parenthood attack, it's the side whose rhetoric explicitly condones the murder of humans. He couldn't stop himself, he's still going. Interesting fact, Planned Parenthood kills 100 times more people in a day than the alleged anti-abortion extremists have killed in 40 years. Yep. So that's Matt Walsh. Matt Walsh, the same one who's now being like, well, hey, you're a scumbag. If you try to bring up or suggest that this could have anything to do with a potential abuse, sexual abuse of a minor. I pulled that. I think I already showed you all that thread. I don't have to go through the entirety of the article twice, but just as a quick recap for anyone who doesn't know, I'm going to pull up. Yeah, here it is. So Matt going after Laura Powell, who is a lawyer who spent a lot of time, like a lot of people in the comments are really upset at Matt Walsh for going after Laura, because Laura is someone who otherwise would be considered to be an ally in the pursuit of, let's just say, loosening COVID restrictions because they are unconstitutional. That's kind of her experience in California, and that's why the right really enjoys her. But if you look at this thread, in 2012, Nashville police received a report that a girl had been sexually abused while a student at Covenant School when she was aged 11 to 14. Police found the allegations were sustained, but they couldn't do anything because the statute of limitations had passed. Reportedly, the victim reported the abuse to the Covenant youth worker and others in 2007 while she was still a high school student. Apparently, no one reported the abuse allegations to the government authorities at the time. The alleged abuser was the writer John Perry. If you don't know, John Perry is the co-author of Mike Huckabee's books. Yeah, Mike Huckabee's fucking co-author is a pedophile. Perry reportedly ran a safe house at the church. At one point in 2002, Covenant Church sent 4 children to live with Perry while their parents were experiencing marital problems. In 2008, Perry reportedly confessed the abuse to the church leadership and went to treatment and resigned from the leadership position at Covenant Church. His wife subsequently filed for divorce, referring to admitted sexual abuse in divorce papers. 2 years after learning about the abuse, Covenant Church leadership excommunicated Perry, having confessed to committing heinous and repetitive sin, and has not shown evidence of repentance. A family who left the Covenant Church congregation after being ostracized for sowing discord filed a lawsuit alleging Covenant had covered up the sexual abuse. The family's daughter, also a plaintiff, was the shooter's age and was initially named a suspect by some on Twitter. The shooter would have been a few years younger than the reported abuse victim. There's obviously more to this tragedy than we know, and I wouldn't be surprised if the manifesto refers to this backstory. I'm not sure what to make of this info, but I wanted to share it since I stumbled upon it. It seems I need to make the case clear that I'm speculating about a connection between these sexual abuse allegations and the murderer's motive. An explanation of a motive is no way a justification. Regardless, and by the way, this line here I'm about to show you completely fucks over Matt Walsh's like flip out over this. But she says, an explanation of a motive is in no way a justification. This is not a leftist. This is not a leftist activist. This is not a trans right activist. This is not an LGBTQ activist. This is someone who the right otherwise were kind of upset at Matt Walsh, for doing this in the first place. Because they're like, wait, no, that's Laura Powell. She's on the right side. So anyways, Matt, understandably, these pathetic leeches are now without any evidence trying to blame the school for the shooting. Never mind, the theory makes no sense. If the shooter was seeking vengeance because of child abuse, why would she murder children? Who kills 9-year-olds as revenge for being abused? Rock solid. There's nothing that can be said about this. And so I corrected him, and then I pointed out there's an article, if you want to read it, in BuzzFeed News. Someone posted this that had new information that I did not know, but there's new information.
I believe I have discovered the motives behind the tragedy in Nashville today, and buckle up because it's going to get dark, it's going to get bad. This school has been involved in decades of cover-ups. This is John Perry, who in 2002 started the Covenant Presbyterian Church and the elementary school. John Perry has admitted to molesting at least 2 girls, ages 11 and 14. The police even said that these claims were substantiated. But he couldn't be charged because the statute of limitations had expired. Not only did his wife, when she filed for divorce, called inappropriate marital conduct, alleging that he admitted to the abuse of minors, but admitted it to the board of directors of the church as he...
Let that sink in. All right? Because the timelines, as we go on, get even more yikesy once you know that.
Stepped down from his deaconship. That happened in 2008, but was still allowed access to the church, its members, and the elementary school until 2010.
2 years. 2 fucking years after all of that had been revealed. After that was known by the institution.
In 2010 was when he was excommunicated by the church. From 2002 to 2012, John Perry operated a quote-unquote safe house for vulnerable children in which they would come and stay with him. Again, after he had admitted to the molestations. In order to cover up his crimes, members of the church harassed and ultimately assaulted family members who were trying to come forward about the abuse. And in case John Perry seems familiar, not only did John Perry co-write Mike Huckabee's memoirs, but he also co-wrote Roy Moore's. That's right, Roy Moore.
That's the part I didn't know. I was like, wait, Roy Moore? Creepy ass Roy Moore? Holy shit.
The former Alabama Chief Justice who also molested children. Side note, before I go any further, I will be using the shooter's preferred pronouns and name. Here's what we've been told about Adrian Hale so far. He was 28 and he used to attend that school, which means he would have attended the school under John Perry between 2002 and 2006. If you pair that with the fact that Tennessee literally just outlawed Adrian's existence in public, I think it's pretty fucking clear to see what happened. In no way am I excusing or condoning his actions, but this was the perfect storm that GOP in Tennessee created.
Now, I don't agree with the very ending of that TikTok video. I'm going to say emphatically that I think you still don't have direct evidence as to what the motivation is. And at this point, yes, we have circumstantial evidence. Certainly, there's a lot of things pointing towards different situations. But at this point, I could not definitively say that there's a lot of yikes. There's a whole bunch of holy shit that's really fucked up. Holy shit, why did the church get away with that? At the same time, none of that, and bringing up any of this, you can talk about 2 horrible things, okay? You can talk about how it's really bad that this church is involved in some very, very fucked up cover-ups of a long-standing person who is directly involved in pedophilia. Not to mention the entirety of the GOP. If we're talking about protecting kids here, how many people does this have to be connected to? Fucking Mike Huckabee. Mike fucking Huckabee. Roy, what are you doing here? Like, holy fuck. Okay, well, that's all fucked. I don't think there's anything wrong with talking about that, and also saying the actions of the shooter are horrifying. Horrifying. I do not know a single leftist online who hasn't pointed that part out and not been like, I absolutely, in the highest possible terms, condemn the fucked up shit that they've done, as I would with any other shooting. And then the same people, like I saw Don Jr. being like, and then afterwards, when he was, a little bit more sober, afterwards talking about how, hey, everybody, did you know that apparently there's no one talking about how there was a war on Christian kids and a war on Christian schools and all this kind of stuff? Why isn't anyone standing up for, like, the war on Christianity? I was like, the same people who will talk about this kind of shit, the very same people who will get out of the, be like, I condemn this when it happens in a fucking gay nightclub. I condemn this when it happens in a synagogue. I condemn this when it happens in a mosque. I condemn this when this happens in a predominantly black church. In every single situation, I fucking condemn this shit. It's horrifying. And yes, I condemn it when it happens to a Christian school. Of course, that's fucked up. That's not the point here, though. Like, you can talk about 2 separate things, right? And again, in the same way that I don't think you can rush to conclusions as to why this person has done what they've done without definitive proof, use that in both directions. Absolutely. What was the year of Mike Huckabee's book written? I don't know. It's probably in that BuzzFeed article. Some other things to note, by the way. The Democratic governor in North Carolina vetoed the GOP's bill terminating the requirement to have permit in order to obtain a pistol. The Republicans had enough votes in the legislature to override the veto, so they just did. Y'all on your app saying the same sides are voting. It doesn't matter. I don't know if that's what I was thinking of. Where's the other one? The Nashville shooter was being treated for serious emotional disorder, but was still able to legally purchase 7 firearms. A red flag law passed by the state of Tennessee would have been able to prevent these transactions. Only 20 states have a red flag law. Here's the language from a similar bill in Illinois. But that's also a really fucked up thing to talk about, because guns seem to be a consistent issue. You know that meme that was going around where it's like a picture of 4 shooters who they believe are trans, even though not all the shooters in that picture are trans, and one of them happens to be an accomplice, of which 2 shooters happened in that one shooting. But the consistent thing was that they were all using, in some cases, very powerful firearms, AR-15s in a couple of the cases. They were all using guns to do this. And people's responses to that were, well, yes, but I mean, what led these attacks was hatred. It was hatred. It wasn't guns, it was hatred. People will do acts of violence and hatred regardless if they don't have guns. Of course, in Japan there are mass stabbings. There's mass stabbings in Canada too. There's been gassings. People use sarin gas in Tokyo in a massive terrorist attack. There's a range of ways in which you can kill people, no question. And yes, you can kill someone with a fork. You can kill someone with a toothbrush. Whatever the case may be, there's a difference between a fork and a gun. There's one that has a much stronger force amplification, that is going to be able to kill things with much more frequency and strength. And then once you get to the AR-15, something that can effectively just rip through someone's body until it's unable to be repaired by paramedics, well, yeah, it becomes a much more effective killing tool, machine, for the purposes of killing. So again, I'm not here to take your guns away. I'm here to point out that restrictions that I think are reasonable can save lives, and in this case could have saved lives. It doesn't matter what the motivation was, whatever the motivation will be, if you have something like this in place that could have prevented someone who already had a flag. Again, the Nashville shooter was being treated for a serious emotional disorder, but was still able to legally purchase 7 firearms. A red flag law passed by the state of Tennessee would have been able to prevent the transactions. Only 20 states have a red flag law. Here's the language of a similar bill in Illinois. Section 1's short title, this act may be the Firearms Restraining Order Act. As used in the act, family member of the respondent means the spouse, parent, child, stepchild of the respondent, any other person related by blood or present marriage to the respondent, or a person who shares a common dwelling with the respondent. Firearms Restraining Order means an order issued by the court prohibiting and enjoining a named person from having his or her custody or control, purchasing, possessing, or receiving any firearms. Intimate partner means the spouse, former spouse, a person with whom the respondent has or allegedly has a child in common, or the person with whom the respondent has or has had a dating or engagement relationship. Petitioner means a family member who responded as defined in this act, a law officer who files a petition alleging that the respondent poses a danger causing personal injury to himself, herself, or having another by having his or her custody and control, purchasing, possessing, or receiving a firearm. An emergency firearm restraining order shall require the respondent to refrain from having his or her custody or control, purchasing, possessing, or receiving additional firearms for the duration of the order, and the respondent to turn over the local law enforcement agency any firearm owner's identification card and conceal carry license in his or her possession. The local law enforcement agencies shall immediately nail the card and concealed carry license to the Department of State, Police Firearm Services Bureau for safekeeping. Whew. But yes, well regulated. A well-regulated militia. Got to get on the regulating part. Yeah, this was Donald Trump. If someone is committing a hate crime, atrocity against the trans community, all of corporate America will be up for arms. But when someone from that protected class shoots up a Christian school, murdering 6, it's crickets or excuses. They despise traditional American values. The same people who always ask and scream and plead for gun reform were doing it once again. Same time, same thing. A lot of them have become burnt out. There's no question about that. A lot of them at this point are kind of just getting like, how much of this do we have to do? It just seems like never ending, you know?
Well, to absolutely nobody's surprise, another mass shooting took place in America. This time at the Covenant School in Nashville, Tennessee, by a former student who murdered a total of 6 people, 3 of them being children. Just horrific. Now, the weapons used to carry out this massacre were purchased legally. The attack was premeditated. The shooter had a manifesto and all, and was ultimately shot and killed by police at the scene. Now, as desensitized as we all are to mass shootings, given how regularly they occur in this country, it is never, ever easy to learn about the needless slaughter of children, ever. I will never grow numb to that. This doesn't change the fact that we're all exhausted from having the same conversation that we always have whenever there's a new mass shooting. Reasonable people will point out the need for gun regulations, the right will predictably obfuscate about the role that guns play while offering thoughts and prayers, and absolutely nobody expects anything from Congress. And the same cycle repeats as soon as the next mass shooting starts, once we kind of move on from the last one. It's just really tiring. And even Republican lawmakers seem exhausted, and they're not even pretending anymore. For example, Representative Tim Burchett admitted that his party has absolutely no plans to fix this issue.
So it's a horrible, horrible situation, and we're not going to fix it. Criminals are going to be criminals, and my daddy fought in the Second World War, fought in the Pacific, fought the Japanese, and he told me, he said, buddy, he said, if somebody wants to take you out and doesn't mind losing their life, there's not a whole heck of a lot you can do about it.
His response reads like a satirical Onion article. No way to prevent this, says only nation where this regularly happens. Yeah. Now, just for fun, let's juxtapose his stance on drag queens with mass shootings and see if there's any differences we can spot.
We don't put up with that crap in Tennessee, and we shouldn't. We're not going to fix it. Criminals are going to be criminals.
See, when it comes to gun violence, unfortunately, there's just nothing that we can do. But drag queens, however, well, dagnabbit, we're not going to put up with that. We have to do something about that. See, I need every single person who's watching this video to understand that these mass shootings are a policy choice. They are a policy choice. And the right has given up the pretense that they care even a little bit. They're done trying to placate us. They refuse to even support solutions that they've proposed previously. For example, remember how they used to try to blame mental health instead of guns? But then the overwhelming majority of Republicans in Congress voted against funding for mental health services in schools? I, for one, remember that. Remember how they used to blame violent video games all the time? Well, nobody buys that excuse anymore either, since video games are no longer some niche hobby for nerds in their parents' basements. We all play them. So those excuses, they no longer fool the masses. So when all of your excuses and scapegoats go out the window, what do? Well, that's easy. You find a new one. There's an endless supply of things to blame besides guns, right? And this time, it's trans people. In fact, all trans people, because that's who the right's trying to blame instead of guns. For example, the Rupert Murdoch-owned New York Post reported transgender killer targets Christian school. I wonder what message they're trying to send here. And Fox News also didn't miss the opportunity to call this an attack on faith and accuse the left of defending the murderer, believe it or not, while shoehorning in trans acceptance as part of the reason why the shooter was motivated to commit mass murder. And of course, you know, since the trans killer reportedly resented the Christian school, maybe it's just a matter of time before another Christian-hating trans person targets more innocent people. They're not even trying to be subtle. Now, I just want to first point out how ironic it is that the right is claiming that the left is defending a mass shooter, considering that the right wing's response to the Club Q shooting was basically, well, I mean, they were asking for it. That was just a couple of months ago. We all remember it. In fact, let's look back at a couple of tweets from Tim Pool specifically. Quote, "We shouldn't tolerate pedophiles grooming kids. Club Q had a grooming event." He also wrote, "People keep calling for wood chippers, and this is..."
Wait. While no concrete evidence has come out of the shooter's motives yet, the statements from the parents were using she, her pronouns, and the daughter to describe them, indicating they do not accept or acknowledge their identity as a trans man. I don't know, like, I would have to consult with, obviously, trans people, because I am a cis guy, so I'm pretty out of my, like, ability to decide something like this. But if it's been verified that they're LinkedIn through the Daily Beast, which I believe, yeah, it was the Daily Beast that verified their LinkedIn, to verify that they had he, him pronouns on their LinkedIn, wouldn't that be at this moment one of the more clarifying statements? I'm asking, by the way. I'm in no way trying to be like, you know, this is what has to be, has to be said.
In other words, it's their fault. They had it coming. Fuck around and find out, right, Tim? He falsely accused them of being pedophiles to justify their murders. And now, the same people who rationalized mass murder of queer people is turning around and accusing the left of defending a mass shooter.
Yes, on Facebook, they apparently posted a desire to use he, him pronouns per friends on the hate. Well, then, yeah, you have to respect the person's desire in this, even if they happen to have done something fucking horrifying.
It doesn't get any more ironic than that. That's what you guys do. Now, second of all, why is the shooter's identity suddenly relevant to the right? There are literally hundreds of mass shootings every single year in America by cis straight white men, and they never bring up the shooter's identity. But when a trans person does it, all of a sudden, it's relevant. The question is, why? Why is the identity of mass shooters suddenly relevant? Well, it's because the right is obviously trying to exploit this tragedy in order to make you think that all trans people are dangerous. For example, Twitter user CatTurd pointed out these shootings that were supposedly done by trans.
I made a correction, everyone. Hold on, I did a thing. Yes, not trans was an anti-LGBTQ plus neo-Nazi, was one of 2 shooters. Used an AR-15, used the semi-automatic rifle, 9mm Glock 17, AR-15 as well. You know, people in the comments were correcting the fact that while they had an AR-15, they didn't specifically use it. I was like, there was still an AR-15 present as well. So that would probably be the correction that I would accept in that.
Be afraid. Be very afraid is the message here. Matt Walsh used this tragedy to make a broader point about all trans people as well, saying, I came to the conclusion years ago that the trans movement is the greatest evil our country faces. I only become more and more sure of this fact with each passing day and more determined to oppose it until my...
Him and Ben Shapiro in the past fucking like 3 or 4 months have just been ramping shit up in their own brain so much. And it's like... It's that meme. Have you seen the meme where it's kind of like the SpongeBob SquarePants stuck inside this like asylum, and then all the walls have like the trans pride flag and SpongeBob SquarePants face, and it's just like, this is like a weird nightmare of your own design. Like, these people are not impacting you or affecting your life in any way, shape, or form. You're not trans. You don't have trans friends. You don't have trans kids. You don't have trans relatives. You don't care about trans people whatsoever. So, but yet still you fixate. Still you are trapped inside the cube for all time. It just keeps getting worse and worse. You just ramp it up, and things in your own mind, your own delusions, just become more and more intense. Like today, Seth Dillon tweeted something that was like, so we're supposed to accept radical gender ideology, the mutilation of children, blah, 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 indoctrination, gender indoctrination, or you'll either like kill us all or kill yourselves or something like that. I was like, no, the request is please stop passing legislation that changes the quality of our life in comparison to yours, and also leave us alone. That seems to be the request. Can you please stop trying to enact legislation that is going to effectively make our lives worse, and also leave us the fuck alone? Like, stop trying to police every aspect of our lives. Seems to be what they're saying.
My last breath. Even the chief twit himself, Elon Musk, responded with an exclamation point to a post from right-wing propagandist Benny Johnson, who argues...
Walsh has been responding to that in replies to Shapiro. I gotta say, I'm loving this. Walsh has ratioed Ben Shapiro, what, like 5 times now? What's it at? I don't know what the number's at. It's fucking funny, okay? You know why ratios are so funny? Because the right takes them so fucking seriously. Like, at a certain point, I kind of gave up on like putting stock in ratios, because ratios happen sometimes on Twitter for the weirdest reasons. I can be in someone's like replies, and because no one ever sees me associate with that other account ever, even if I have a like monstrous account, 150,000 subscribers or followers or whatever, I can reply, it gets no replies, and then when the right-wingers find it, they're like, Serfs! And then it just like, massive ratio, like that, just a huge ratio, and I'm just sitting back, I'm like, oh yeah, little corner of the internet, my ass is getting ratioed the fuck right now. You know what? I'm gonna mute this thread. How about it, boys? Just see ya, boys. Escape hatch, and then I never have to think about it again. I've actually completely forgotten about that one specific ratio up until this very moment now. Now it's returned to me. But for fucking right-wingers, oh man, you can just see it. Like, there's some right-wingers who will block you when the ratio happens. It's like they don't block you until the ratio. Elijah Schaefer is one such example. Jackson Hinkle is another such example. In both those blocks that I got, it was not until my response ratioed them, at which point it was block. Yeah. But I guess that's the same thing. That's like, yeah, the eject button. Don't have to deal with it anymore.
The modern trans movement is radicalizing activists into terrorists. The Quartering responded to Benny Johnson saying 0.5% of the population is committing nearly 100%.
They are proper frothing this week, yeah. So I made that post the other day that was a meme that actually someone posted to me on Mastodon. I was like, oh, can I repost this? Oh yeah, go nuts. I didn't make it. And so I reposted it on Twitter. And it's the one where it has all these different forms of mass shooters in America and how they get treated with. So when it happens to be someone who is Muslim, well, then, we need to build the wall, or, we need to increase anti-terrorist laws. When it's someone who is trans, it's trans terrorism, of course. This is now one of the newer ones. It's trans terrorists. But when it's like a cis white male, then effectively it's, this was probably a poor soul who had a rough upbringing, and whatever led to him to do this terrifying tragedy is obviously deplorable and sad. And we need to find out what influences truly put him down this ungodly path. Was it Marilyn Manson songs? Was it violent video games like Doom and Duke Nukem and Mortal Kombat? We'll never truly know until we find out. And the replies to that meme, someone was like, why are so many of the replies in here racist? I wouldn't expect that from the serfs. And I was like, so ever since Elon Musk took over, this is my life now. Sorry, not just mine. Everyone on Twitter's life. That's just kind of Twitter now. Twitter is like, you make a post, it still gets like enough traction and everything, because enough people are still addicted in watching this whole thing burn before their very eyes. But man, the reply guys, they're vicious now. They're like all these old accounts that got roasted at one point or another for racism, sexism, transphobia, homophobia, you name it. Whatever it was, they were relegated. Now they're all out. Now they're all angry and furious. And I haven't blocked anybody yet, too.
Of mass shootings lately. So the message is very clear. They want you to be afraid of trans people and think that all trans people are violent. Based on this.
Blue.
But if we're looking at the identities of mass shooters, well, Socked on Left put together this graph of high lethality mass shootings between 2018 and 2023. And as you can see, cis white men carry out the overwhelming majority of mass shootings. However, for some reason, the right isn't trying to demonize all cis white men. But if identity suddenly matters so much to right-wingers, why not point that out? Why not ask how cis white men in America are getting radicalized into committing all of these mass shootings, given that they occur so frequently? We know why they're not asking this question. Now, regardless of the shooter's identity, the underlying solution does not change. It's the guns.
Yeah,
we need gun regulations, period, end of story. We don't need to pretend as if it's violent movies or violent video games or a lack of prayer in schools or a lack of good guys with guns to stop the bad guys with guns. It's the guns. Let's stop entertaining the right's disingenuous excuses. It's obfuscation, nothing more than that. But the reason why the right is hyper-focused on the identity of the shooter only in this instance is because they're trying to exploit this tragedy to justify further violence against all trans people. It's a strategy right out of the Nazis' playbook. And I want to get to some responses from people on Twitter who eloquently pointed this out. Policy analyst Daryl Owens says the parallels between the Nazis and their sympathizer media fanatically focusing on Jews, who were 0.75% of the population leading up to the Holocaust, and the US right focusing on trans people, who are 0.5% of the population, are genuinely terrifying. He's absolutely correct. And as Walsh points out, thousands and thousands of mass shootings from cis people pass without incident, a small handful from trans people, and we get this. They will kill you if they get the chance. Do not let your guard down. And he is absolutely correct about that. This is not hyperbole. Hunter Avalon writes, conservatives. Only like 7 black people are killed every year by police. What's the big deal? Also conservatives. Over the last 6 years, 4 shootings were carried out by people who weren't cis. This is a massive problem that needs to be addressed. Exactly. The hypocrisy is so brazen. Also, Lance from the Serfs points out, after the Charleston shooting, where 9 black Americans were slaughtered by a white supremacist, Fox News immediately spun the narrative that it wasn't a hate crime, but an attack on Christianity. Now, the Nashville shooting is both an attack on Christianity and was trans ideology, of course. And last but certainly not least, Hassan Piker points out, over the last 5 years, 2,840 plus mass shootings have occurred in the U.S. 3 of those...
I can't 100% confirm this, but I think Hassan right-clicked my screen grab of this. So in some ways, this was us collaborating in a weird way, you know? I think I got right-click saved. I'll take it.
The shooters
take anything.
Have been trans. Guns are the #1 killer of children between the ages of 1 and 18, and the right are salivating over a school shooter being trans to deflect away from the main issue, ease of access to weapons. Exactly. Yep. He is exactly correct. Yep. So we see through you, right-wingers. We know exactly what you're doing here, and it's despicable. No, we're not going to let you derail the conversation as you always do whenever there's a mass shooting. If you truly cared about the lives of innocent people and children, you'd advocate for one thing and one thing only: gun regulations. But since you never do that, shut the fuck up. You don't need to feign concern over dead children when we know you don't give a shit. Spare us the theatrics. You never cared about dead children. Now, a Harvard University professor named Juliet Kyman explained how identity of the suspect doesn't suddenly change the fact that the lowest common denominator, unsurprisingly, is guns in all of these mass shootings.
So each of these cases is always going to have a particular difference, right? Whether it's someone is angry at their father, or someone had something happen.
In all four of the cases that they keep trying to spread around the internet as all being these mass shooters who are also trans, even though they are not all trans, one common thread, and one that is pretty common amongst younger shooters, by the way, outside of the fact that 98% of them are cis men. 98% of them are cis men, and usually younger. They usually skew into the younger range. They also predominantly shoot up places that they know, schools and places of work. When it comes to certain shooters of certain different demographics, they will shoot up different locations. But a very consistent theme amongst a lot of the young ones is also that they are experiencing huge amounts of bullying, mental stress, mental anxiety. Suicidal ideation is probably one of the most common things that you can locate between a lot of them in terms of alliances. A lot of things that would require a lot of different multifaceted aspects of society to step or ramp up. Increasing access to healthcare for children, increasing access to financial support for poor families. If you have a poor family, the parents can't spend any time with their kids. The home life is probably very, very rough. There can be drugs, there can be alcohol. All these things can add stressors. If there are other aspects of their personality, and it doesn't matter if they happen to be straight or gay, even though the majority, yes, are cis men who are straight. But regardless, whatever the stressor is in your life, there could be a whole bunch of factors that can lead to this. And it's not just the person was completely mentally gone. There's every single shooter is like disappearing. Like, healthy societies don't have school shootings. Yeah, like you can point to a lot of when you look at these happiness indexes, and it's like, well, let's look at what the countries that rank the highest on the happiness index. Oh, look, it's Scandinavian countries, and they all look happy. And then those memes pop out. Like Political Puppy, I think, isn't here right now, but she was showing us a whole bunch of memes where it's like life in Finland, and then it's just everyone's like like happiest country in the world. And they're funny. It's funny for what it is. But the other thing that we should take away from it is that huge amounts of healthcare, huge amounts of spending on both having social structure, social safety nets, that kind of stuff, can produce better results for society. We've seen it. You can look at the numbers. They kind of speak for themselves, right?
And this is a unique case, and we have to be sensitive about it to the extent that Audrey Hale identified as a woman. We do not see mass shooters who are female, especially in particular school shooting murderers. This is actually, I think, the first time that I can remember. I know I was on air yesterday stating the same. And so that uniqueness is obviously going to go to only one part of this, right? Each of these school shootings has motive and means. Motive goes to the particular person. What's their mental health situation? What happened at the school? Why did they choose that target? As Andrew was saying, what clues did they leave behind? What was their community seeing? And then the means. And then that's when you get the connectivity, right? That's when you start to see these are all starting to look the same, right? I sort of think now, like, we don't own guns in this country. Guns own us at this stage. And this is where we have to now focus on an important part of an agenda, which includes mental health, protecting our kids, fortifying schools, but also the connectivity, which is a certain kind of gun. Look, pronouns do not kill children, right? People with guns kill children, and it's going to be a distraction in our coverage and keep us from what we now know, which is each of these cases has a similarity more than any difference.
That is exactly correct. To try to disaggregate guns from gun violence feels like gaslighting, and that's because it is. And the right has been doing this to us forever. But to then shoehorn in anti-trans hysteria into the conversation as well, it just makes their concern trolling feel so much more vile this time. They are truly morally bankrupt individuals, and
Yes.
the fact that anyone in this country takes them seriously is genuinely astonishing to me. But I want to recenter the conversation on the actual issue, which is gun violence and guns. And I want to leave you with this poignant speech by freshman Congressman Maxwell Frost, who calls out the corrupt cowards bought off by the gun industry, who are the ones who are perpetuating this problem by refusing to take action.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today because I am furious. Angry that 3 kids died today in Nashville, Tennessee. Angry that hundreds of parents had to cry their eyes out.
Hey, A Difficult Truth. Thank you for the Ready Party 9.
Anyone
go to twitch.tv/A
and
Difficult
angry
Truth.
that we have to live day after day when we turn on the news to see rampant gun violence claiming life after life. And all of this is because politicians in this chamber that have been bought and paid for by the NRA, that put profits over people, over human lives. Cowards who wasted our time last week, passing a parental bill of rights, not giving a damn about the rights of children to be able to go to their classroom without the fear of being gunned down due to senseless gun violence. It is likely that at this moment, the next mass shooter is planning their shooting. What will this chamber do about it? I filed my last bill last week to simply create a federal office of gun violence prevention. 3 kids are dead today, and every day that we wait, 100 more people die. I pray to God that there are some Republicans in this chamber that can help support my legislation to save lives. I yield back my time.
Very good speech. Also, go subscribe if you haven't already. I doubt you haven't to the Humanist Report. He does good things. Do you enjoy the Serfs but prefer not to have to use your eyeballs? Many are saying this. Well, we've got the solution for you. It's the Serf Times in podcast form. Available on most major podcasting networks now. If you enjoy it, please consider leaving a good review and feedback because it really helps the show out, apparently, and it's free, just like the podcast.
To our gods, Xander Corvus and Peyton L. Juste, we shall spend many a generations building mighty cathedrals in your honor. To our monarch, Tom Spiker, we are but your oafish jesters, here to offer you a laugh at any opportunity. To our brave knights of the Round Table, Rachel K., Izzy Solidarity, Victoria Bell, Sebastian Demel, Mark Harmon, Benji Arney, Scary Earth Human, Tony, DM Rivera, Resident Scarecrow, Sir Nickus, Cheryl Alvarez, Ruby Kelly, Brandon, Words Greenwood, Everything Important, Hegbert Celine, Matthew Scarborough, Stellar Vision, Ariane McCarthy, Doug Cady, Daniel Sutton, Jenna Tao, Dark Puppy, Quiet One 85, Anna Loves Riley, Omni, Riley and Anna, Poodlehawk, Multimondi, Trevbot EXE, Brian Ephraim, Anthropophojack, Catherine, Ramon Acosta, Incosin, Ralph Parler, Violent Orchard, Political Puppy, La Media Panza, Todd Buckingham, and Todd La Jeunesse. We salute our valiant heroes off to fight injustice everywhere.